minute.
Oh, yes, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Sustainable Development Policy Institute, I welcome you all to today's dialogue on SDPI's response to COP28 from consensus to realization. So today we have been joined by some of the distinguished experts from SDPI and also His Excellency, the Ambassador of the Republic of Azerbaijan to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, His Excellency Khizr. So through this dialogue, what we'll actually try to analyze is that what have been some of the very key findings from COP28. And as we move from COP28 towards COP29, what should be the implementation framework, not just globally, but what are the particular specific that has to happen within the Pakistan to make sure that effectively things go forward. So again, let's try to figure out what could be the way forward. And along with His Excellency, we have been joined by Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail, the Chairperson Board of Governors at SDPI, Dr. Abid Qayyum Suleri, Executive Director of SDPI, who will just be joining us very shortly, Dr. Shafkat Munir, Deputy Executive Director, SDPI, Mr. Qasim Shah, Deputy Executive Director, SDPI, Dr. Khalid Walid, Research Fellow at SDPI, and Ms. Zainab Naeem, also as Associate Research Fellow at SDPI. So once again, I thank you all for joining us today. And just before we actually delve into the discussion, let me just set some of the housekeeping rules. Along with the Zoom, the session is being live streamed on different social media platforms, including LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as Facebook. The session is being recorded and the video will be posted on all of our social media channels. So you can always revisit the discussion once you feel comfortable. We also invite questions from our audience at the end or as those who have joined us online, please feel free to raise your hand within the Q&A box that actually appearing on the right-hand side. So now I think just coming towards the session at hand or the theme at hand, the 28th session of COP28 of Conference of Parties, it actually holds some significant importance because we actually did achieve some of the very important milestones in that as well. I mean, just taking lead from the the first global stock take to the operationalization of the loss and damage fund. We also heard things about transitioning away from fossil fuel in a just and equitable manner. So I think there are a lot of key areas where we need to develop how do we actually go forward with those. So, but again, at the same time, COP has both positive as well as negative indicators, and this is what actually going to be our key areas of discussion today. So I think just starting with initially, we'll be taking some remarks from experts here, and then we'll be requesting His Excellency to also sort of give his opinions around that and what should be the way forward going from COP28 to COP29. So with this, I'll be initially requesting Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail, the Chairperson of Board of Governors at SDPI, for his opening remarks and expert overview of COP28. So Ambassador Shafkat, over to you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear friends, I'd like to thank SDPI for organizing this first discussion. As far as I know, this is the first time that a discussion on the outcome of COP28 is taking place. And it's a great opportunity for me to discuss the outcome of the meeting. Before I discuss the substance, the outcome of COP28, I'd like to say that in this COP, more than ever before, more than any other COP, Pakistan's participation was very, very impressive. The Prime Minister, the interim Prime Minister, participated in the Global Climate Summit, the environment, the climate change, and environmental coordination minister participated in the ministerial meetings. The secretary of the Ministry of Climate Change was there. Senior officials were there. The provinces were represented. A number of federal departments and provincial departments were were also in attendance. We had a number of parliamentarians who were busy interacting with their counterparts from other countries. So Pakistan's really put up a good show. Even the previous minister, who had played a great role in COP27 and who had received the COP president when he visited Pakistan. As far as the substance is concerned, the conference started on a very optimistic note, because the first item that was suggested for consideration was the decision for the operationalization of the loss and damage fund. As we all know, this fund was agreed upon after years and years, if not decades, of intergovernmental negotiations, during which developed countries had stubbornly refused the persistent demand of developing countries for a funding mechanism for dealing with climate-induced consequences that were unfavorable to them. So the COP28 started with the adoption of the decision for the operationalization of the loss and damage fund, and that created a tremendous atmospheric sort of situation. I mean, the conference started on a very positive note, and the whole atmospheric of the COP was put on in an optimistic and positive mode. So that was the first, but of course, and also not only was the operationalization decision adopted, but countries, including the host country, which pledged $100 million, a total of about $800 million were pledged by more than a dozen countries. The main sort of thing is the developing countries agreed that the World Bank would serve as the operator, will operate the fund, but there will be an executive committee which will comprise developing and developed countries that will interact with the World Bank in the management of the fund. So that was the number one topic. The number two, the second topic, which had actually led to considerable speculation, was the global stocktake. This stocktake had been taking place for a number of years. Governments of parties had submitted their inputs. I saw the Indian input, which was quite long and very strong. Overall, the thrust of the synthesis report of the global stocktake was that the international community had unfortunately not fulfilled their responsibilities in regard to climate change. The performance on mitigation was very poor. The performance on adaptation was unsatisfactory. There was inadequate application of science technology for impacts such as renewable energy, and that, above all, the quality of global partnership for climate change was not at the satisfactory level. So it was a very damning kind of indictment of the international community. Now, as a response, the host country worked very, very hard to produce a result. There was one draft which was submitted just a day before the scheduled closure that was found unacceptable by the developed countries and countries which were campaigning for strong action on fossil fuels. So a new draft came, And I will not go into the 21-page resolution on the decision. I would only refer to that particular paragraph which had the headlines, global headlines, and that is that the COP28 in Dubai announced the decision that countries, that parties will contribute towards transitioning away from fossil fuels. These are very magical words. So we have a decision for all countries doing their bit to transition away from fossil fuels. Before there is a package of measures for the transitioning away. I'd like to mention that the decision specifically mentions that countries will act in accordance with their national circumstances, because it is impossible, given the divergences in economic development and in the use of fossil fuels. It is impossible to prescribe equally, in quantitative terms, restrictions or conditions on parties. So they will have to make their own decisions based on their national circumstances. So the measures that will be needed or will be taken for the transitioning away from fossil fuels in the energy system, number one is the tripling of renewable energy capacity and doubling of energy use efficiency by 2030. This decision has been taken, was recommended by the G20, by other forums. The European Union had also adopted that, but now we have a Conference of Parties decision. The second one is the phasing down of unabated coal power. The third one is the net zero emission energy system. And the fourth is a variety of actions, renewable energy, nuclear energy, abated carbon capture and storage and use, a whole variety of measures. There is some criticism of the carbon capture and storage, but we don't go into that. There's also a call for mitigation of methane emissions by 2030. And another important measure in the package, which is very, very applicable to Pakistan, because nearly 40% of our emissions come from the transport sector. So the conference calls for reduction of emissions from road transport through a variety of efforts, development of infrastructure, deployment of zero and low zero and low emission vehicles. And the last and I would say the seventh important item in the package for the transitioning away is phasing out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. Because, developed countries are spending trillions of dollars on subsidizing their fossil fuel energy sectors. So that is the global stocktake decision, which has hit the headlines in the international media. The second most important issue in climate change after mitigation is adaptation. Now, on adaptation, the global goal, what has not been fully adopted, but what COP28 has adopted, is a set of time-bound targets on adaptation. These include climate change-induced scarcity of water, and which leads to a number of issues, in terms of agriculture production. And there is also climate resilience in food and agriculture production, and resilience against the adverse health impacts of climate change. These were agreed upon. Developing countries were, of course, disappointed that so far the international actions on adaptation have not been adequate. The allocations, financial allocations, are grossly inadequate, and now we have a set of targets, but targets are meaningless without financial resources, which are glaringly missing. Of course, the developed countries' answer is that we are dealing with finance under the finance chapter, that the item of finance will take care of the finance needed for the goal of adaptation. As far as finance is concerned, as we all know, way back in COP15, President Obama had personally negotiated a deal whereby developed countries had agreed to jointly mobilize funds totaling 100 billion annually with effect from 2020. This target has not yet been reached. There is hope that 2004 will see the materialization of this goal, that we will get the 100 billion. But in the meanwhile, COP29 will have to deal with a new quantified financial goal. And the new goal must use the 100 billion as the base rather than a ceiling. The ceiling must go into much more than this amount. Of course, the global situation is not terribly favorable. I was reading a report that there has been a net reduction in the development assistance that has been provided by the developed countries to developing countries. So the overall atmosphere, the overall ambience for development assistance is not currently favorable. Let's hope that it will turn favorable. So these are the big issues. Global stocktake, of course, operationalization of the fund, and the adaptation, the progress made in the financial discussions. Of course, the big discussion, I think COP29 will be dominated by a discussion on the new quantified financial goal. A number of other initiatives were declared, announced, and I would particularly focus or refer to the Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food Systems, and Climate Action, for obvious reasons that we in Pakistan now face a problem of food deficit. The second thing which is connected with this is the announcement of an alliance of champions of food systems transformation. And the other issue, and I will conclude my presentation on that, is the recognition of the significant role played by cities in causing climate change, and all the cities are also capable of mitigating climate change. So this was achieved we had 500 mayors in Dubai, 500 mayors of some of the top cities of the world got together. The Habitat people were there, and it has been agreed that the UN Habitat and the UNFCCC Secretariat, they will work together on developing initiatives whereby the cities of the world will play an increasing role in climate action, both mitigation as well as adaptation. So that's my presentation, which become a bit longer than I had intended. I hope other panelists will come up with more detailed analysis of the specific issues. I wish you all a very comprehensive and a useful discussion, and I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khail Saab, for so precisely highlighting all of the key initiatives. I think just again ranging from the loss and damage fund to the issue of the climate finance. And I think just to highlight here that SDPI in itself also played a very critical role in the whole loss and damage thing. I mean, working in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Change, Environmental Coordination. I think we have also just recently developed an SDG 7 roadmap of Pakistan in collaboration with the Ministry of Energy as well. And I think in that context, Pakistan's target do come up, and fully agree with the points that you raised, that definitely the issue of finance has to be dealt perhaps more strongly as we go further ahead. So I think with this, we'll be more try to discuss more on what should be, I mean, how do we should go forward with this. So I think now coming to again, first point of Ambassador Saab towards the loss and damage, now coming to Dr. Shafkat Munir. So you have done some already significant work around the loss and damage thing, disaster risk reduction. I've just, we have recently shared here, and those just recent studies that we actually did will also be shared with all of these. The QR codes are displayed here. You can download 3 of the recent papers that Dr. Shafkat and his team did around these themes. They'll also be shared via the link with all the participants. So how do you see the developments at this COP, and what do you think should be a stance as Pakistan goes forward with this? What should be our way forward from the point hereafter? So over to you.
Thank you, Abed. I think Ambassador Kaka Khail Saab has covered a lot of areas, summarizing what happened actually in the document and at the COP. I would touch upon some other things which were, on the sidetrack of the negotiation, or which were submitted in such, in terms of research, as we already from SDPI has done the research paper, which you just shown here. But there was a lot of work which has been done by UNDRR, because now the debate is going on that how climate change adaptation and DRR practices, particularly with the angle of anticipatory preparedness or anticipatory action, could be better merged together when we'll be talking about the new financing, because there could not be 2 silos of financing, one coming for DRR and for the other one for the adaptation. So that's why the thinking and all these negotiations are around that. I would like to speak on a couple of points which actually need to be discussed here, which is my analysis also. When we look at COPs, it's not only COP28, even COP29 or before COP. Since I have been covering COP since 2007, whatever I have seen in the negotiation is that COP is always taken by 2 different angles. One is the angle of the negotiators or the countries or the members, and the other angle is what other outside the negotiation process, people like the think tanks, academia, civil society, activists, they look at it. So that's why I'll just speak on some of the language also. Kaka Khail Saab mentioned on fossil fuel thing, loss and damage, how things are different in the language. And that's why 2 perspectives emerged. So we should be very clear about COP, that COP is not as what we think as civil society or academia. COP is what the negotiators or their vested interests are. So that's why we try, of course, we developed from SDPI these 3 papers to influence the process. And partly we have been successful, because during the negotiation, Pakistan, if you look at the NDCs 21, we had committed coal down, on coal phase down, rather phase out of coal. We have committed. But this time, just in 1 year, there was a change of mind and policy in Pakistan. Pakistan objected the coal down language. Pakistan boycotted in the negotiation. It was Pakistan who resisted it because, you know, it's not technically possible that in the emerging situation, this is the cheapest kind of energy source which Pakistan and other developing countries have. Countries have already developed. When China can say that they cannot be net zero in 2050 because they need some more energy to consume and produce more and get the level of progress which the West has done. So why Pakistan cannot say that we will be looking ahead at 2060? So these debates came in, and now this policy change has happened. We even during when the NDCs were submitted, we from SDPI suggested that we should not overcommit. But this was at that time overcommitted because we as an institute can only suggest the policy option. But when last year, when we suggested the government rethink over it, and then the previous prime minister went to the coal area, and they assessed that there are $24 billion worth of coal in Pakistan, which we have the right to use. So these are the debates on the sideline. As I said, any COP, if you analyze it, there is a two-way to analyze it. The negotiator, and how all of a sudden, you see, Ambassador Saab has also mentioned that at the very outset of the meeting, out of our expectation, they immediately accepted, well, we are operationalizing the loss and damage fund. We were thinking that we had to struggle a lot to reach to this level. But at the very outset, they operationalized it. But what has operationalized is not enough. Let me quote a few figures here. As ambassadors have also mentioned, $700 to $800 million have been committed in the loss and damage fund by dozens of countries. But they are not enough. It is just a peanut. What we require, particularly the developing countries require, is between 290 to 580 billion. And remind, this is just 800 million. We need 290 to 580 billion dollars, which is required for loss and damage by the developing countries like Pakistan. So that's why there was a serious debate on the sideline, because I was mostly connected to my area of expertise on DRR with the UNDRR. 7 key papers and reports were submitted, and leaders were urged at the COP28 that we should look for a zero climate disasters ahead. Because if we cannot pay money to adapt to this situation, or at least mitigate, then certainly we have to be, on the other side of commitment, which is zero climate disaster commitment. This is not simply possible. For that, UNDRR has submitted 7 key papers. So time is short. I will not take much time on these, but I would like to number them so that you can have the essence of what has been demanded in these papers. For example, the first paper talks about financial arrangement for addressing loss and damages. This is a report which actually talks about loss and damage, how country can assess their loss and damage, how they can claim or access the funding around DRR. So, and how they can meet the gaps of that. So that paper talks about most of the risk understanding, how we can understand risk, then how we can have anticipatory action, particularly anticipatory DRR actions. So that paper provides a solution, full-fledged solution through the COP process. Now, when we will be meeting in Baku next year, then certainly these areas, this year, sorry, but next COP 29. So these debates will be there. Already, as a primer, UNDRR has put a proposal that for financing, when of course there will be a new financing mechanism, how to feed the DRR things. So that will be the first thing. And that is based on the understanding about the risks, anticipatory actions. Second one is the technical guide on application of climate information for comprehensive risk management. First is understanding risk, and this is basically the fundamental question which has been addressed in the Sendai framework, which has already been agreed among the member countries in 2015. So in line of that, the second immediate document, which has worked out very nicely by UNDRR, that talks about the risk sensitive development. If we are putting some money for development, it should be looked at with the risk angle. The third one is very expressive kind of thing, and there are many chapters in it which deals with the early warning system, because it is about technology, it is about people's behavior, it is about how right messaging should be through the signaling of the early warning system. Then global status of multi-hazard early warning system. These all reports have been submitted to the COP leadership in Dubai, and that's why each report is marked as 2023 report. If you download these report, if you go through these report, you will find that these are a very good recipes for the future, particularly when we will be discussing about the new financing agreements and management. Then there is a inclusive early warning, early action checklist and implementation guide. This guide is very important because it provides you a checklist for every country. Every country can have their vulnerabilities, their risk assessment, and against this checklist, they can check what is their status of at risk and how they can cope with it. Fourth one is the global methodology for infrastructure resilience review. That's about the infrastructure, how infrastructure could be made resilient and building back better with the angle of the resilience and risk. Fifth one, which is very important, closing climate and disaster data gap, new challenges and new thinking. This is very important because, as I said earlier, even in the actions, when we talk about DRR and CC actions, they are in silos. Now thinking is that we have to club this, and this could not be clubbed previously because there was a huge data gap. So this paper tries to build the gap between the two. The data relating to the climate has things about as a new challenge and new thinking that how we can have ways of working to deal with these two things. Sixth one is again on early warning system and early action in fragile conflict, violent context, addressing growing climate and disaster risk. I think this was the area on which we are also working here in Balochistan's context. SDPI is developing. I am leading on that with my team a paper where we are looking at both angles, the climate risk angle or the conflict angle, whether the conflict hits or heighten the climate or the climate risk heighten the conflict. So these are very important. In the world, there are studies that both have multiple impact on each other. That's why UNDRR has built this paper, this report and guideline, which is, I would say, is a framework to look at. Any researcher who are looking at both angles, they could benefit from this report. And this is, by the way, they have developed this as a model based on various existing model and studies. So this is very important for our future debates and the next COP. 7th is directly relating to budget tackling for disaster risk reduction and climate change adaptation guide for design and taxonomy. It gives us from where we can get money at the national level through the taxing measures and other things. So I think these are very good stuff which have been for the first time submitted there. I think I have finished my time. Otherwise, I have more
Yes,
points.
I think
We'll
hopefully
come
we'll
next
again
time.
come back perhaps.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you,
So
thank
thank
you.
you so much, Dr. Shafkat, for highlighting the all the work to the UNDRR and also what SDPI has also been doing. With this, I think just again linking the whole point, but also with the food and agriculture, I'll be coming to Mr. Qasim Shah Saab. So if you could also briefly highlight, I mean, what were some of the key lessons and how we should perhaps take this forward from this point? Yes.
Uh, Excellency, worthy fellow panelists, colleagues, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Ved. Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel has set a very nice page, actually, to speak about some of the challenges which are being, which are rising up from the discussion which has happened in Dubai in COP28. But some of the things which has happened during the COP26 and 27 could not be ignored here. And when it comes to food and agriculture, in UAE, there was a special declaration signed by 150 countries in UAE that was on the food and agriculture. Pakistan is one of the signatories. And this is commendable thing which the government has done. But I will come to the hindsight of it later in my discussion. The second is when we talk of the agriculture, we need to keep in mind the methane pledge, which was signed back in COP26. And again, Pakistan is signatory to the methane pledge as well. And globally, in COP28, most of the signatories have agreed that they are going to reduce the methane impact by 2050 by 30%. And this is going to cost $1 trillion to all the economies. And when it comes to Pakistan, we need to look into these two things which we have recently ratified or signed, and either as a part of the COP26 or either in the COP28. Our next door eastern neighbor, India, has not signed any of these. And when SIFC, our investment facilitation corps are there, basically to look and looking for the investment in Pakistan. And at the same time, we are requesting agriculture sector, and I would say the dairy, which is the largest methane emitter globally, because the dairy sector is one of the largest sector, which is basically emitting like 30% of the total emissions globally. And in case of Pakistan, this is 36% of the agriculture emissions come from the dairy sector. So if we have to reduce the methane emissions in Pakistan by 20%, we need to reduce the number of cattle by 1 billion. And this is not the number which is there in Pakistan. So it will take ages actually for countries like Pakistan to come up to this number. And in case of, and I was reading this morning only while I was preparing for this seminar, that in New Zealand, they have prepared a plan to reduce and tax the cattle, basically for the methane emissions, to come up with the strategy and the technology to curb the methane emissions in the atmosphere. And they have estimated that they are going to reduce the overall GDP by the dairy sector by 20% by 2030 if they manage to implement the plan there. And in countries like Pakistan, where 83% of the population can't afford the healthy diet, where roughly 40% of the population is food insecure and 12% is severely food insecure, if we reduce the production of rice by half, then we can reduce the emissions which we are targeting to reduce by 20, 50, 30% of the target to achieve in rice sector. So it will be very difficult situation. That's the first thing. The second thing is basically about the adaptation. Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhel talked about it. Shafkat Munir Sahab has alluded to it, that there are the global pledges. But the adaptation fund was $230 million, and it stands $230 million today, even. But the total adaptation related investment by the small farmers, which are just 49 million, 390 million globally, they are contributing $368 billion annually to adapt to the climatic changes. And this doesn't account for the labor cost, which they have incurred actually to manage to adapt to the climatic changes. So the numbers doesn't speak very favorably in favor of the developing countries. And Shafkat Kaka Khel sir, when talked about the finances, it's not just the finances. I would say that here we need to urge our demand being a developing country should be on the transfer of the technology. If the technology is transferred, perhaps we can manage the resources from our own kitty. And this is something which the people consider a very big claim, but this is not a claim because already our small farmers are investing a huge sum of money to adapt to the climatic changes. And they are pretty much adaptive to it. I recently was visiting one of the fields there in Tando Muhammad Khan in Sindh, and a very small farmer who was just owning an acre of land, he was growing rice, and he doesn't know that the government has signed the methane pledge where they're going to reduce 30% of the methane emissions. And he was still mulching the whole field with the water, and it was the rice seedlings were completely inundated. I asked him how much money he would earn out of it. And he told me that it's roughly 300,000 rupees, which he expects that if the current market prices are available, he will make this much money. And how much you are going to invest next year? And this was my follow-up question. And he said that almost half of the amount should be going into, needs to be invested if I wanted to have this much of profit next year. So perhaps this is the time actually we need to talk about it, that the why and how the governments actually signed on the different international treaties, what kind of feasibility studies or the need assessments are carried out actually in advance. Because on the one hand, we are looking for investment, and this is mostly the foreign direct investment which we are looking in the agriculture sector. Most recently, we have pledged 10 million acres of land to be made available to the international investors in agriculture and the dairy sector. But if this is the emission target which we wanted to achieve by 2050, perhaps most of the investors would shy away coming to Pakistan. That's the first part. The second part, and again, I will go back to the wise words from the Ambassador Shafkat Kaka Khel, that he said that perhaps we need to look into some of the conditionalities where there are some relaxations available to the developing countries. And one relaxation is available under the Convention on Biological Diversity. The government is currently pursuing an agenda where they wanted to pursue investment in an agriculture sector, and they are open to, they are ready to open the farming fields for the genetically modified foods as well. This is very interesting, and we at SDPI are also working on it. And I remember from my old days when I used to work with the Ministry of Commerce, and we were working on the biosafety guidelines. We use the precautionary principle, which is the Article 15 of the Convention on the Biological Diversity, actually to provide a safeguard to the Pakistan to stop the onslaught of genetically modified seeds and foods in the country. And perhaps still the time is not ripened for the countries like Pakistan to open up its space for the foods which are basically, we don't know how these are going to harm the populations who are feeding on it, or the environment in itself, and how it will affect the total biological diversity available within the country. And most recently, when I was sitting in one of the similar seminars, somebody claimed that 80% of the cotton grown in Pakistan is basically the genetically modified, that's called the BT cotton, Bacillus thuringiensis. And I laughed back at him and said, sir, 90% of the pesticides which are imported in Pakistan are basically used in cotton alone. So the cost or the footprints of the foods, either it's agriculture or the food, which are much higher perhaps should be avoided to be grown in countries like ours, unless it is proven that these are the safe. That's the first part. The second part is basically, and this is my larger question, and I wanted to really use, something is coming to my mind, and this is perhaps only the verse which I remember from Iqbal. He said, "Who kare humse zara sa gila bhi sun le." So gila jo hai wo ye hai ki there are 1% elitist, richest people in the world who own almost half of the world wealth. Are they ready to surrender some part of their wealth so as the poor countries like ours, where the 40% people are living below the poverty line, and the countries like ours could achieve the SDG 1, that is directly deals with the poverty, or SDG 2, which is basically reduce hunger, and they have to commit like that, yes, they are allowing for countries like ours to alleviate extreme poverty, and the measures the countries like ours can take, it will induce like 2.37 gigatons of carbon dioxide, which is equivalent to 4.9% on the basis of the 2019 calculation which was carried out in the IPCC. That is the second part of my, and the third and the last part of my submission here is basically that there is a misconception among the experts. They consider that the horticulture crops are the only crops which are sequestering carbon from the atmosphere. This is not true. Every plant, every single plant which is just a 1 day life or 100 years old, they are sequestering atmospheric carbon, and actually 25%, 1/4 of the atmospheric carbon is basically used for the photosynthesis process by the crops itself. So we need to look into some of the formulas, some of the calculations and the auditing system which is being used by the IPCC as well. And the countries like Pakistan actually should be advocating for this in the upcoming COP29 as well. And in the COP29, perhaps there is again a stock taking of the agriculture and the food and agriculture sector, which is pledged under the declaration of the UAE. And perhaps there we can discuss it further, but this is something which is taking grounds for discussion in globally, as well as perhaps we need to start this discussion in Pakistan that the role of agriculture in sequestering carbon is important. This should be recognized when we are discussing. And if we recognize this, perhaps the total emissions for Pakistan that might not stand at 0.78% globally, it may further reduce. And I stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Qasim Saab. I think one thing which is coming up common here is that perhaps not be so ambitious with all the commitments that will make different platforms, and let's be more realistic. So I think just again, taking lead from one of the points that Qasim Saab mentioned around the role of partnerships, I think just coming to, we all know that COP28 did happen in the MENA region, and the partnerships had to play actually a very important role. So I think with this, I'll be coming to Zainab. Zainab, if you could also be a little brief. Yeah, and just let us know, what do you think about how the public partnerships turned out somewhere, and what do you think should be, again, linking it to the way forward, more importantly. Yeah, over to you, Zainab. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. But asking the only female panelist to be brief is not justified. But yes, I'll be brief because I'm very excited to listen to what His Excellency has to share regarding the next COP. And first of all, congratulations, as Azerbaijan is hosting COP29. So before coming towards this, what the SDPI's response to COP28, I hope you all remember, like, we had floods in 2022, one of the biggest disasters of history of Pakistan, and then in 2023 earlier, I think we had a conference in Geneva, the Resilient Pakistan conference, where international partners committed or made pledges regarding their support for the rehabilitation of the flood affectees in Pakistan and all. So a lot of pledges were made regarding the financial commitments. However, I don't think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. Nothing was materialized because definitely we had our own issues. We say we had our systemic issues or the IMF issues, etc. So that's why the support couldn't get in. But I think we can blame ourselves for so many issues being a developing country, but not for the climate crisis, because this is not our doing. And based on that, I think the aspect, we do understand loss and damage fund getting materialized at COP28. When it was announced in COP27, there was global shield. So that gives some sort of shield or support to the countries like Pakistan and other countries, developing countries getting affected from climate change. Now we had, as Ambassador Shafkat Kakakil mentioned, the new collective quantified goals. And when there were meetings of the technical groups, we had high hopes because it depended mostly on how the needs of the developing countries will be assessed, and then funds will be given to the developing countries. But again, when COP28 ended, though some good news as L&D getting materialized, but nothing on the new collective quantified goal. So as somebody from a developing country, my expectations from the next COP28 host would be getting some support for the developing countries, if not in terms of loss and damage, because that is still, a far dream, but something that how funds can be transferred to the countries that are actually getting affected from climate crisis. Because if I talk about the success, then I don't think so. Being Pakistan, we haven't achieved anything. We need to do a lot of homework of our own. Yes, we need to put our own house in order first. We need to do some national stock taking first in order to present the global stock take. Global stock take was presented, but at NDCs, our progress was very limited. And if I quote here the UNEP latest emission gap report, according to that report, global greenhouse gas emissions have surged by 1.2% from 2022 to 2020, from 2021 till 2022, hitting a record of 57.4 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent. That's huge. And even if all pledges are met, whether conditional or unconditional, we'll still not be able to achieve that 1.5 target. We'll somehow achieve till 2.5, but reaching to 3 degrees is like it is going to happen if we are not meeting the pledges, if we are not fulfilling what we have pledged. At COP28, there has been a lot of hustle and bustle around youth and around green skills, around climate finance, also around some in the green zone. There was a lot of debate around carbon markets, but unfortunately, nothing could be evolved in terms of the blue zone. And we are hopeful that in next COP29 around carbon markets, overall, our Article 6 and how countries can engage in trade of the carbon markets or carbon credits, that would be somehow materialized or something could be, achieved at next COP29. Apart from that, private sector, at least I can talk on behalf of my country, there has been a lot of engagement from private sector at COP28, though government delegation was huge, whether it was from the national government or from the provincial government of Punjab. But the private sector was there, and there has been a lot of interest. And I think now is the time where the public sector can take a lead in collaboration with development partners. And also, since Azerbaijan is hosting COP29, where they can chalk out a roadmap or how the response of Pakistan should be in terms of overall climate action, how they should integrate, since you've asked about the partnerships, the private sector in the debate of climate action. Because since loss and damage is at international level, but at national level, because we are not getting any funds at the moment, so at national level, what could be done to materialize the overall finance? Private sector, they have the finance. Private sector is ready to contribute, but they need guidance from the public sector, a roadmap where to invest and in what to invest. And for that, I think we do have tendency, we do have opportunities in the energy sector, although data gap is there, but institutions like SDPI is trying to fulfill that gap. We are trying to get connected with the local communities at very local level to get that data. As my other colleagues have mentioned, it's also in the food systems. So there's a lot of scope. Pakistan can invite investors, and but for that we need to provide them with the right set of data where the actual investment is required. And SDPI is working on it. Last time, as Dr. Shafkat, he has been leading the loss and damage, the gap analysis around it. And this year, we are planning on to lead on where the investments can be invited in, and we are working on it now. We have started working on it, and I think media has been playing a crucial role in highlighting climate and action in Pakistan. We are also working on building capacities of the media in terms of reporting loss and damage, how they should be reporting. And this year, this is on our agenda, so that talk on climate won't stop. Throughout the year, we'll be highlighting, because climate change, it knows no boundaries. Also, one of the outcomes at COP28 from SDPI, because we are accredited with UNFCCC, so we take a delegation, was that we launched in collaboration with Climate Action Network South Asia a report on national climate urban resilience in Pakistan. And that's how we are collaborating with the regional partners as well, to highlight where there are gaps and to assess where we can collaborate for more investments. So I think, last but not the least, we have a youth bulge in our country, and in the public sector, they do require technical support in terms of climate adaptation and carbon markets, mitigation, etc., etc. So I think for that, maybe this is now is the time that they should start integrating more youth, because youth now understand what are the situation. We are now working to integrate the responses from youth, and also, since overall the political climate, we are trying to integrate with the parliamentarians. On behalf of SDPI, we are working on so that the climate agenda is part of their election manifestos also, and this should be taken as a priority for the next government, whenever it is formed. Apart from that, we are also working in the green skill space, because whether it's private sector, whether it's businesses, their green skills needs to be enhanced and developed, and we are working to build their capacities, and we'd be very happy to collaborate with the Azerbaijan government to start working on how countries like Pakistan can work together to initiate a new sort of specific climate diplomacy model that is launched as a success story in next COP29, and where developing countries take the lead, not the global north, who are already being very unjust with the developing countries, especially when it comes to finance. They just blame us that you first put your house in order. We do understand we need to do that, but climate crisis is not our doing, and for that we are just when we demand that we need the finance, because a lot of population is already suffering. And it's not just the case on floods, it's the case on heat waves, it's the case on droughts, it's the case on how our youth is in despair at the moment. What if there's another gulf in the northern areas, in Chitral side, the surface runoff would increase, it is going to create havoc in the downstream. So yes, those are the key issues, and I think we are very much ready to work with all the partners. And now, thank you so much from my side. I'm very excited to listen to what His Excellency has to say regarding the next COP.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zana, for again very ambitiously highlighting all of these points. And I think just two of the main takeaways from your points are, I mean, just also putting the house in order and also understanding what needs to be given to Pakistan, and also the need to provide an enabling environment for the private sector to come and invest in the whole space. Yours, I think we'll be discussing this further, but before going to His Excellency, we have one more speaker. I'll be now requesting again Dr. Khalid a bit very briefly on, because this year's COP, the COP28, was also somewhat labeled as an energy COP as well, because there was so much debate about the energy going around the carbon market. So if you could just very briefly shed your opinions, and if I could just request the MIS team to share, I think he has 5 to 6 slides. So yes, Dr. Khalid, very quickly. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Ubaid, Excellency. Dr. Shafkat Qasim Saab, Ambassador Shafkat Kakakhail Saab highlighted very eloquently what happened at COP and what is needed to convert this consensus at UAE to Olympics of climate change, the declarations, major declarations, energy and carbon markets, and what would be the road to Azerbaijan. So we would be realizing these consensus over there as well. So just a snapshot. This was from my article. It was shared by COP presidency as well. The Olympics of climate change. There were about 100K people in blue zone, 156 heads of state, 22 leaders of international organizations, about 50,000 students there, 780 ministers, and 500 mayors from local governments there, and about 500K people in green zone alone. So it was a brilliant, diversified sort of meeting, COP this time. In terms of declaration, major declaration, there was Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership, JAMP pledge. It was endorsed by 71 countries. It was signed by Pakistan. Then there was another declaration, UAE Declaration on Climate Finance, endorsed by 13 people, not signed by Pakistan. 143 countries endorsed UAE Declaration on Climate and Health. It was signed by Pakistan as well. Then another major declaration was on climate, nature, and people. It was not signed by Pakistan. UAE Declaration on Climate Relief, Recovery, and Peace was not signed by Pakistan, endorsed by 82 countries. Global Energy, Renewable, and Energy Efficiency Pledge, the most famous pledge of COP28, that was tripling the RE and doubling the energy efficiency, endorsed by 130 countries, not signed by China, India, and Pakistan. COP28 UAE Declaration on Agriculture, Food, and Climate, mentioned by Qasim Saab, endorsed by 159 countries, signed by Pakistan. COP28 UAE Declaration on Gender Responsive Just Transition, endorsed by 76 countries, including Pakistan. UAE Declaration on Hydrogen, also known as Declaration of Intention, endorsed by 37 countries, not signed by Pakistan. UAE Declaration on Cooling Pledge, endorsed by 66 countries, not signed by Pakistan. So these were the major declaration coming from the COP28. I would be focusing on CHAMP and the energy ones. In terms of CHAMP, this is the Coalition of High Ambition Multi-Level Partnership. It is based on the previous COPs. Building on that, there was high-level champions conference in COP21, the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action at COP22, the Tranoa dialogue process at COP23, and in COP26, the Glasgow Climate Pact. It calls for the collaborative and science-based climate action coordinated between national and subnational government. So focus here is on subnational governments, that is cities, towns, and states, emission reduction strategies, building resilience for severe climate action impacts should include these governments as well. What are the subnational government? They should be included into planning, financing, implementation, monitoring for the NDCs, for the national adaptation plans, for their national biodiversity strategy and action plans, and for their LTLEDs, that is long-term low emission development strategies. What is the action framework suggested in this pledge? Taking it up to NDC 2025, inclusive institutional and informal process to enable subnational governments till COP30 in 2025. NDC investments taking into account the local governments, and then there would be a voluntary review and a high-level dialogue in COP29 for this CHAMP initiative as well. Pakistan signed this pledge. A way forward for Pakistan is to have local government elections, a representative local government, a database at the level of Union Council for climate change, a climate smart and climate aware city development authorities. In one of the meeting I attended at COP28, there was two mayor of Warsaw and mayor of Congo. They were negotiating and building capacities so that they can fight the battle of climate change independently, and they were devising policies at the city level. So this is very important for Pakistan as well to have a local government system in place, and we have effective city development authorities to fight climate change. In terms of tripling the renewable energy, doubling the energy efficiency, this was endorsed by 130 countries, but Pakistan, India, China, they do not sign that pledge. It was based on IEA and ARENA's report. To keep 1.5 degrees intact, we need to triple renewable energy. Currently, it is about 11,000 gigawatts at global level. We need to take it to 33,000 gigawatts. We need to take 2% rate of energy efficiency to 4% till 2030. It calls for tripling renewable energy, doubling the energy efficiency, and it calls for planning to be based on the principle of energy efficiency as a first fuel, so that we are conserving and making our systems efficient. We need to have investments in value chains, technology development, accessible financing mechanism to reduce the cost of capital, and capacity building for obviously renewable energy and energy efficiency. Another actionable framework for this tripling renewable energy and doubling energy efficiency is the cross-border grid interconnection, permitting the renewable energy projects, clarity of on market design and incentive schemes. Pakistan not signed this pledge. What is the way forward for Pakistan? Pakistan currently has the capacity of 3,300 megawatts, but by 2030, Pakistan plans to expand this capacity to 21,000 megawatts, which means that we have already tripling or more than tripling our renewable energy potential. So why not signing this pledge? We need investment in transmission system. We need to sign some of the just energy transition partnerships and financial mechanisms. We need to also sign global renewable and energy efficiency pledge. And obviously, we need to phase out the fossil fuel subsidies, which are almost equivalent to our total development budget, the PSDP. In terms of COP28 declaration, there was gender responsive just energy transition. Pakistan signed it. It reiterates that we need to have this gender inclusive energy transition, which is based on the Lima gender work program. It reaffirms that there should be focus on Beijing declaration that also calls for the same. It expressed concerns over that climate change, intensifying inequalities and gender-based violence that is also triggered by the climate change disasters, it should be brought into the context, and there should be gender-responsive social protection system as well. In terms of that hydrogen declaration, Pakistan didn't sign that one, but there is a more focus that there would be mutual recognition and hydrogen certification schemes to foster a global renewable and low carbon hydrogen market. There is a more focus on international partnership for hydrogen and fuel cells in the economy. That is IPHE and Hydrogen Tech Corporation program. It also plans to assign government experts to IPHE and hydrogen TCPs so that there is a certification system based on the mutually recognized frameworks and mechanisms. And lastly, commit to annually monitor progress in cooperation for mutual recognition of hydrogen certification systems. So if Pakistani government, the Ministry of Energy, they are looking for a very ambitious kind of hydrogen plan. If they want to do that, they would be needing this hydrogen certification schemes and their recognition as well. So Pakistan needs to sign that as well. In terms of, there was another pledge, and that was Global Cooling Pledge, and it was based on the Kigali Amendment. To keep 1.5 degree intact, we need sustainable cooling as well. Sustainable cooling can save up to 78 billion tons of CO2 equivalent. It calls for phase down of HFCs, sustainable cities, to reduce these heat island effects that mentioned by Zainab as well. Renewable-based cooling technologies are technically viable, economically feasible. Sustainable cooling through deployable scale in rural areas, through distributed generation in the rural areas. It can reduce by 25%. In terms of actionable framework, the aim is to reduce cooling-related emissions across all the sector by at least 68% by 2050, ratify the Kigali Amendment by 2024, and again, the National Cooling Action Plan in the National Adaptive and National Action Plan as well. Again, Pakistan, what Pakistan needs to do is, currently, if you look at the energy mix or energy consumption pattern in Pakistan, the winter peak is around 18,000 megawatts, while the summer peak is about 36 megawatt, which means we face about 2x energy consumption in the summer. So we need to follow this cooling pledge very closely, because there is inefficient cooling and cooling appliances and fans in Pakistan. NECA, the National Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority, is already working on building codes and MEPS. The deadline to reduce HFC under Kigali Amendment for Pakistan is 2047. So we need to work on that as well, and we need to increase the pace of our efforts in that regard as well. In terms of carbon markets, Zainab highlighted that the negotiation actually failed to reach a deal on Article 6 in terms of carbon markets, because there were two groups in carbon markets. One was unrestricted market access, and the other group was advocating for transparency and human rights. I think we are working on carbon markets at SDPI. We also advocate that carbon markets should be linked to equitable development. They should not show any sort of greenwashing sort of initiative. They should be linked with community-centric and climate adverse-centric approaches. So these were two major things in terms of carbon markets. Operationalization of Article 6.4 delayed up to COP29 as a next opportunity for revisiting this framework. So COP29 would be vital for this carbon market initiative. The absence of an outcome at COP28 is seen as a preferable to a detrimental decision, with hopes pinned on future improvements at COP29 at Azerbaijan. So what would be the road to Azerbaijan in COP29? In terms of global stocktake, UNFCCC meeting in June 2024, it would suggest some sort of roadmap or mission to 1.5 degrees centigrade, and it would be led by the UAE, Azerbaijan, and Brazil, the COP presidency for COP29 and COP30. Emirates Framework for Global Climate Resilience. The countries will be providing written inputs by March 2024 in that regard. In terms of Just Transition Work Program, at least 2 dialogue would be convened before COP29. Written inputs for the work program by March 2024 would be provided by all countries. In terms of mitigation work program, 2 global dialogues to be held through 2024, and countries would be submitting proposal for the topics they address by February 2024. And lastly, there would be Presidency Youth Climate Champion. COP28 and 29 presidencies will be appointed at the first official youth climate champions. So this would be the road to Azerbaijan, COP29. I would stop here. Back to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid. I think you have very rightly highlighted all the key agreements. So perhaps this was why COP is also was labeled as an energy COP. So once again, thank you so much. And all the speakers who have very pertinently highlighted all the key takeaways we had from COP28 and what should be the way forward. So with this, we've also been joined by Dr. Abid Qayyum Sulehri, the Executive Director at SDPI. So Dr. Abid, we have been discussing all of these points. I'll be coming to you for very brief remarks and then inviting His Excellency for his chair remarks. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Beth. First of all, let me formally welcome His Excellency Khazar Farhadov for joining us at very short notice. And indeed, his presence here, it demonstrates the seriousness that the host country of COP29, Azerbaijan, gives to this very important issue. Now, COPs, unlike in dramas, there is no good or bad COP. So COP can be good, COP can be bad, depending on which side of the fence one is looking at. And most of the climate change COPs, they have some mixed outputs. And what I usually say that COP is among those one thing in life whose existence cannot be acknowledged while we have them. But if those mechanisms, those things, if they are not there, the vacuum, it leaves a huge gap and a huge loss. So while we can all keep on criticizing the ineffective decision making at COPs, lack of implementation of those decisions, the delaying techniques, etc., etc. One thing is for sure that if that multilateral platform was not there, world could not have been where it is today. So I'll take this COP from an optimistic note. Now, Khalid, Qasim, Ubaid, Zainab, Qasim, and Shafqat, they must have apprised you of the thematic areas, what happened or what didn't happen. But for me, the good news is that it is for the first time that this shifting away from fossil fuel, that is agreed. And it is just like a genie coming out of bottle, which now can't go back. So even if it takes time to completely phase it out, this is very much on the agenda of COP now, and that would be regularly discussed. The second good thing is that although COP was being hosted by a petrochemical giant, United Arab Emirates, but we saw that the country, the presidency, the conflict of interest could not be pointed out, and the president, along with all other members, they actually tried to make a win-win deal. And that takes us to Baku, which again, fortunately, unfortunately, incidentally, is a petrochemical state. And one is quite optimistic and hopeful that following the presidents from UAE, Azerbaijan would also be taking this agenda of cleaning the environment further. And that is perhaps where there are a lot of opportunities. And those opportunities were also discussed on the sidelines of COP official meeting. For example, now we are talking of uh, fuels of the future and green minerals. So we know for sure that in next couple of decades, fossil fuel, although it would still remain there, but it would have its equally important cousins and siblings, which is nickel, which is lead, which is copper, and other green minerals which are used in EV battery manufacturing. So this rapid improvement in technology would actually mean introduction of new fuel, which would be more competitive and which would be more in use. And of course, one of the positive outcome of all these COPs is that countries have started looking towards alternatives and alternative fuel. Similarly, another positive thing that happened in COP27, Khalid alluded to it, the global stock taking. Looking at our progress, how far we were successful or not successful in fulfilling our commitments. Yes, the result is not very good, but again, one can say with the precision that if the Paris commitments were not implemented, the increase in temperature, which now is being predicted to be somewhere around 2.5, it could have been 2.9. So this is a 0.4% reduction in temperature due to implementation on these Paris commitment. It is again something that must be appreciated and must be recognized in this whole debate and discussion of climate change. Likewise, although the petrochemical states, petrostates and OPEC countries, they asked for carbon sequestration and new technologies to reduce the carbon emission, which today is being discussed and ridiculed that it is second to impossible. But I think that is a way forward, and that somehow gives a homework to all advanced as well as emerging economies to improve the technological aspect of capturing the carbon. And I think the win-win solution, which I can see occurring maybe few more COPs down the road, is not phasing out fossil fuel, but phasing out the emission from fossil fuel. So fossil fuel can still be there as long as fossil fuel producers, they can capture, they can sequester, and they can reduce or phase down, phase out the emission while producing that fuel. And this is one of the rays of hope that technology would take us to the adoption of these CCUS that we call them, carbon capture, usage and storage techniques. Now, while all of them, they are good points, I think for me, the most disappointing point, and I think it would keep on disappointing us for perhaps another decade, that is climate financing. Loss and damage fund, yes, it is there, but developing countries, they got that loss and damage fund after compromising where it would be housed, what would be the rules of engagement, who would be contributing it towards it, who would be eligible to get benefit from this fund. So none of these things were discussed. But yes, good news is that loss and damage fund is there. And now, of course, in COP29, one is looking forward to these new and additional and innovative financial mechanisms for climate financing. Similarly, another disappointment, if I can use the word disappointment, is all about our individual approaches. So countries, after recognizing that climate change is a global threat and a threat to humanity, is now trying to implement it following an individual approach. And I keep on saying that the world governments, they were able to spend a fiscal stimulus, combined fiscal stimulus of $30 trillion to combat COVID on few month notice. And the reason was that it was a threat to humanity, and we knew that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So countries, they not only spend this much amount of money, but they also collaborated. They provided vaccines to the countries who didn't have the capacity to produce or procure vaccine, and all other measures, so that this pandemic can be taken care of. Climate change is a pandemic, and it's a slow onset pandemic that is affecting us all. And I think we need to adopt and follow the same approach, the collaborative approach, uh, in order to combat with this pandemic, as we adopted for COVID. So in COVID, we had two strategies. One strategy was to isolate ourselves, to close down our borders, not to talk to our neighbors, and stop interacting. So that was the knee-jerk reaction. But then it was to gain some time to produce all those technological and scientific advancement, and to raise and mobilize funds that could then enable the global cooperation to handle it. So similarly for climate change, if the countries, they would keep on confining to themselves, following their individual personal interest, for the short time duration, they may be able to be climate smart. But this strategy is certainly not going to work. It never worked in any of those global pandemic, and it would not work in this case as well. So countries, they need to learn to cooperate with each other using a win-win-win mentality. And that's why I said that there is neither a good cop nor a bad cop. We need to find a cop who can actually then help us being more secure against climate change. And one is looking forward to the presidency of Azerbaijan and the Baku Declaration, which of course would, one is hopeful that would take the progress so far to a few more notch up until we are ready to go for COP30 in Brazil. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Abid, for precisely highlighting all the points. I think with this, we've all been waiting for His Excellency. So we'll be inviting you for your special and concluding remarks. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank SDPI for organizing this seminar. Secondly, inviting me. Thirdly, which is the most importantly, giving me a chance to listen to you. Because these are thoughts that belong to specialists. I'm a diplomat, and I am going to today, of course, share my thought also after listening all these things, and also the plans of my government and achievements of my government in this regard, what we achieved. First of all, when environment issues discussed, I'm always tending to think that we are individuals as a human being cannot separate us from environment, because the meaning environment sometimes associates surrounding us something, but it's not surrounding. We are the part of this. If we can understand this, then we can give real value what's surrounding us, which is the part we are. And secondly, this is the process. This is the will accompany us always, but how much we will get prepared for this, then so much we can be successful. And secondly, it is something contradicting and also going in parallel, going together with economic development. Because without economic development, you will not be able to finance your plans, even related to environment actions. But otherwise, if you will not develop economically friendly to environment, you will at the same time harm this environment. Right now, just Madam Zainab mentioned, the private sector is very important because if it is related so much, so intensively with economy, which is, the whole part together, economy and climate change and environment is interrelated, interdependent factors, then we should take care about also economy together with climate change. And I think in this regard, Madame Zainab's words are very on the place. Of course, I'm highly appreciating all the speakers and I learned so much. All these are right things, but underlining the private sector is very important. Why? Because economy building by private sector. Government cannot decide all things that private sector will implement, will fulfill. They should listen private sector and together collaboration with private sector they can achieve, which will be mutually beneficial for both sides. And we can in that case, we can also care about our challenges that our environment facing and also ensure the enough sources, financial sources and other technical sources and administrative sources also to cope with all this. It is my own thoughts, but of course, my own thoughts not came to my mind just from somewhere empty place. Why I'm saying all this because right now I'm going to share with you the experience of my successful experience of my government in this regard, because Azerbaijan suffered so much from ecocide, which carried out by occupant Armenians. When they occupied our territories, besides, along with expelling around 1 million Azerbaijanis out of the 7 million at that time from their homelands, they destroyed those territories also. They polluted all the rivers with heavy metals. They cut down almost 60,000 hectares of forests and took away. They carried out everything, countryside, herbicide, just they wanted to erase the trace of Azerbaijanis from those territories, around 1 million people, and they just wanted, in their plans, to Armenize this territory, but it is impossible. How you can force 1 million people forget about their homelands? It's impossible. They have their graveyard, they have the villages. It is just, real thing. This is not just imagination. What we expected that there's so much, pollution, so much damage to our environment of Azerbaijan together with occupation, but we couldn't understand the extent when we liberated those areas. When we came to those areas, we saw they didn't left any untouched buildings. They erased to the ground almost 700 settlements. It includes towns, cities, villages, but they did it, of course, damaging environment also, polluting our rivers, illegally exploiting our mineral sources. And that's why this issue of environment is very, important to us and hurting us. We are trying to make these territories once again one of the most developed, most clean, most green, just to turn off the page. That's why we prepared for this. We knew that when we liberated these territories, because we committed, my president committed, my people committed to liberate these territories, because we have to bring back 1 million refugees and IDPs to those territories, which we started already last 3 years. We also ourselves prepared for this financially, from side of knowledge also, with cooperation with these countries like UAEs, the other countries who has all the achievements in this sphere. And we already started investing mainly on renewable energy. Azerbaijan, as dear Dr. Abid mentioned, this time also a petrochemical country will host this COP. But by the way, by the history, Azerbaijan first country in the world that industrial way produced oil, even before USA. We should be proud of that. Muslims with such a knowledge did it. And we also trying right now to shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And we are planning subsidize almost 30% of electricity with renewable energy till 2030. And we also committed reduction of the greenhouse gas emissions by 35% by 2030 and 40% by 2050. And relatively to the 90s baseline year, it will be happened. It will be because what Azerbaijan committed till now, we achieved. Relatively being the small country, relatively being this part of Muslim world that were not sometimes as a part of Muslim world never get acknowledged, accepted seriously, but we achieved. We liberated our territories, becoming in the history of the UN maybe only country implemented along the UN Security Council resolutions. We liberated these territories. What kind of aims we put in front of us, we achieved. I mean, I think these also will be another big achievement of Azerbaijan. And it is not just words I'm saying, it is just not admiring my country, but there is a real results in the non-alignment movement's chairmanship, which we held almost 4 years, which is in normal 3 years, but member countries asked us to extend 1 year more. We brought to the agenda all these very pending and very important issues, like putting position against nationalism vaccine during pandemic, because Azerbaijan, being landlocked country, being relatively small by geographical, the area geographically, and also facing double standards last 30 years from the beginning of the first day of its independence, we are very well, aimed to cooperate with the international organizations and with the countries who are suffering these double standards. But I would like to underline another thing, that besides all this policy we carried out till now, we also very much focused cooperation with friendly countries, brotherly countries, which we, assess Pakistan together with Turkey like that. That's why I can assure you that inshallah, Azerbaijan will achieve its, aims related to COP29, which we already, this year, as we are chairing this COP29, we already declared the year 24 in Azerbaijan Green World Solidarity Year by the special order of the president. And in our development programs, just already started before, we are trying to make our country clean environment and green growth. And now 3 zones of Azerbaijan, region of Azerbaijan, Karabakh region, economic region, East Zangezur region, and Nakhchivan Autonomous Republic, all declared green energy zone. And what we're building right now in the liberated areas, it is on the concept of the smart village and smart cities. Just another, tangible, example that I would like to share with you. In last year, October, we put on operation 230 megawatt solar power plant in Baku with an investment from Masdar. It is worth around 200 million US dollar, and it will produce 1.5 billion kilowatt hours of energy per year. And we also planning generate, as I mentioned, 30% of our electricity from renewable sources, and also export 4 gigawatt of energy to Europe from this renewable energy through the cable passing by Black Sea by 2030, which has great trans-regional socio-economic, geopolitical, and geostrategic multiplier effects. And I am very sure that when we are talking about Pakistan and Azerbaijan solidarity, especially in the international organizations, we always co-sponsoring our own initiatives, we always supporting each other. And I think together this COP29, we will have open new avenue of cooperation between Pakistan and Azerbaijan. Even during the COP28, we invited Pakistan to Azerbaijan pavilion also, UAE, to cooperate together. And I think we can help each other with our knowledge, with our other sources, and etc. And I'm very thankful in my conclusion of my brief that today's meeting is very much valuable for us. That's why even in short notice, less than in one day, I tried my best to attend here. And I will looking forward to cooperate with your institute, because with the ideas, the assessment, the research I heard here is, even not being this expert, it is really interested me so much. And thank you very much for such a kind, very important topic, and including Azerbaijan, and at the research base and at the tangible project plans and projects, Azerbaijan is ready to collaborate with our brotherly Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And if I can add, those of you who have ever gone to Baku or will go to Baku, the moment you enter in the old city, there is this Multani Karwansarai.
You are from Multan?
No, but I have visited that Karwansarai.
Yes.
So there is this Multan.
Foreign minister also from Multan.
Yeah. So there is this Multani Karwansarai, and the plaque there, it says that this Karwansarai was designed for merchants from the region of Multan, now part of Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which established strong trade and diplomatic relations
14th century.
That Karwansarai was constructed in the era of Muhammad bin Tughlaq, 1325 to 1351. So the historical ties with Azerbaijan, I think those shouldn't be underestimated. And Excellency rightly mentioned that Pakistan and Azerbaijan, they have excellent brotherly relations, and one is quite optimistic and hopeful to foster these relations in future as well, inshallah.
Yes, thank you so much, Your Excellency. And once again, we congratulate Azerbaijan for hosting COP29 and furthering your efforts for the climate action. So you very rightly pointed out the case of Azerbaijan itself, and we really hope that all the initiatives that you mentioned, including renewable energy, the smart cities, and solarization, they're all going to be extremely important. So once again, thank you so much for joining us with such thought-provoking and useful remarks. And just before we close, if we have any question or any brief comments here from the audience? So
I just
perhaps just
want
a
to
very
add one
quick round.
sentence
Yes,
to the
sure.
Excellency. You know, this is the first meeting, but throughout the year, we will be meeting many times on similar kind of thing, and we'll be closely working this institute with you. Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
thank
So
you.
perhaps just a couple of questions, and I'll be shooting it collectively today. Yes.
Hello, this is Our Rahman. His Excellency, I met you in the NAST. I'm Assistant Manager Sustainability over there with Dr. Rizwan. I just wanted to first of all, to congratulate you on the hosting of COP29. And I would like to mention that, the institutions like NAST, we are developing the solutions for the climate action in Pakistan, and we are advancing that. So how would you see that if we as an academic partner would come there and to sort of alleviate and leverage that climate action in terms of what Pakistan is doing, and we are looking forward for your support in this kind as well.
I have a mic over there, sir.
Thank you. This is Mashood Urfi. So I have some short, crisp questions, three of them. One is that, as Shafkat Saab said, that there is a huge gap of like 700 million to 580 billion of loss and damage funds. So is there a way that we can improve the representation, or we should just move towards some other solution that would be more rational to work on? And then another is that what is the thing that stops Pakistan from connecting their conventional stock market with the carbon markets? And when talking about the solutions, we have a bottleneck that connects us to the political leadership. And as far as I followed the consultations with political leadership, I felt that they were unable to bifurcate between the greenwashing and the actual real solutions. Then how can we solve or address these concerns? Thank you.
Thank you. So perhaps Dr. Shafka, you can initiate.
Thank you very much. I think it's very valid question. Yes, there is one leverage we can take from international funding, but that's not the only solution. As you mentioned, the other solution is that we have to work at country level to look at our own risk factor. And that's why I quoted here 7 working papers which has been produced to COP28 by the UNDRR. And all these papers suggest some other avenues for financing DRR and disaster things. So there are many other avenues. Thank you.
Khalid, if you could very briefly highlight the point on carbon.
Yes, pertinent question in terms of carbon markets. I would say the carbon markets is not that conventional market in that sense. That is a sophisticated market that has to deal with the uniqueness, the integrity, the creativity, and associated co-benefits of carbon credits. So in that regard, the stock market in this traditional sense at this point cannot directly linked with the carbon exchange or carbon market. Obviously, stock market is working so that we can have this integrated and assessment framework for co-benefits of carbon markets, and as well as the integrity of carbon credits, so that carbon credits are traded in that traditional stock market as well. So.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, just perhaps we can initially take Saleh, and then you can also respond to that. Okay, sure.
Regarding carbon markets, there's another point why we are unable to connect, because at this moment we do not have a regulation on carbon markets. So initially the project that we are already having on the mangroves, the blue carbon project, there has been some setback in that as well because of the lack of the regulation. But Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination is in a process of developing that policy, and SDPI is part of the technical committee on who's advising on how the policy can be initiated. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question with Sir Qasim, that he has said that there is a huge gap between the emissions and the pre-feasibility studies that could be done before we are going to COP. So what do you think that who will be the focal agency or ministry that should push that agenda, that we need pre-feasibility studies and we need the scoping studies before we are going to the COP for the commitments from the government side? And also on the net zero side, I'm asking Dr. Khalid that does Pakistan take any stance on that, or do we have any certain agenda on that? Yeah.
So perhaps on the net zero, I can very quickly respond that it's still under process because we're still working around the long-term low emission development strategy. But let's see how it goes ahead. But if also Dr. Khalid wants to respond later, but firstly, Sir Qasim, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Saleh. Uh, Basically, there was a slip of tongue in my talk. I said billion animals. It's not. It's 100 million animals in Pakistan, buffalo plus cows. And if we, these studies were carried out back in 2020 and 2021. And the Ministry of Climate Change was presented these studies, but still, when we went to the COP under certain influences, perhaps, we have signed this methane challenge. And most recently, if we look into some of the international, and Dr. Khalid has explained actually some of the new declarations which we have signed there in the UAE, some were rejected, but some were signed there. Some have their own kind of implications, which might be our business sector, most importantly, will be facing in future. So it's basically the responsibility of Ministry of Food Security and Research, and more importantly of the provinces who, because after the 18th Amendment, they are the ones who are dealing with the livestock, agriculture, and other sectors. And if they could contribute in the discussions or the decisions made at the Ministry of Climate Change, perhaps that makes more sense.
Yes, perhaps just one very last comment from Sadia. You want to add something? Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Ubaid, and all the speakers. A very productive discussions have been taken place here. Just one thing I have seen missing here, which Dr. Khalid mentioned about the gender declaration, which was the gender transition plan. Which was the amendment of gender action plan and the Lima framework. So I have seen we did not take the theme of gender in detailed discussion here. So if we are not discussing the gender in organizational level here, how can we expect this on a national and international level? So I just want to suggest here, I think we should have take this action seriously. SDG 5 is linked with other SDGs, or if we are talking about the sustainable development goals, how can we achieve that goal if we will not discuss this here? So
Yes, thank you so much, Sadia. Would you like to add?
Well
Yeah.
noted. I mean, we should have discussed this. Yep.
So I think with this, I'll be again coming to His Excellency if he wants to respond to any of the questions made. Yes, it's the first one. Yeah.
Yes. Just I would like to ask the question from the United University, which is very good coincidence that I can also here declare that we just inaugurated Haidar Aliyev Auditorium in the National University in December. It is our national leader. I mean, we are all the achievements right now we are enjoying in Azerbaijan. We call him this modern architect of Azerbaijan, architect of modern Azerbaijan, and all economic achievements and all reforms in all fields, including in environment also. And also, by the way, National University have signed 2 MOUs with one of the 2 of the Azerbaijan's prominent universities. One is Azerbaijan Technical University, another is Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy. It is not only just Diplomatic Academy, but he has also IT department also, and including that's why the way this year, I mean, using MOU by the NAST University, we can concentrate on how we can help and how we can contribute to COP29, year, let's say, as I would say, the Green World Solidarity Year, which we declared in Azerbaijan. That's my answer for the beginning. I can't say so much because the issue of the 2, I mean, both sides, universities, I mean, the collaboration in the future, which I feel that it will be happening because in a short notice, thanks to leadership of National University, we could be able to open this auditorium, very nice auditorium. I'm inviting all you, inshallah, in our next event. It was just inauguration event. In our next event, we can, I mean, choose the COP29, and we can invite all the specialists from around all Pakistan, especially from the UN Institute. And it will be useful both for the agenda that we are right now having in our daily life in bilateral international relations, and also for the using this university NAS as a well-known prominent university in the Pakistan. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, so Your Excellency. I think with this, we have discussed points. If we still have any question, we can perhaps discuss over a cup of coffee as well. So with this, I'll be coming to Dr. Abid for final. Yeah, thank you. So again, once again, thank you so much, everyone. If you still have, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.